boys and girls. So we are going to continue with chapter 29, and we're still working on the book about Mig. Chapter 29, start with the curtsy and finish with the thread. Miggery Sow's luck continued. On her first day on the job as a castle servant, she was sent to deliver a spool of red thread to the princess. "Mine," said the head of the serving staff, a dour woman named Louise. "She is royalty, so you must make sure you curtsy." "How's that?" shouted Meg. "You must curtsy," shouted Louise. "Gore," said Meg. "Yes'm." She took the spool of thread from Louise and made her way up the golden stairs to the princess's room, talking to herself as she went. "Here I am, off to see the princess, me, Miggery Sow, seeing the princess up close and personal like, and first off, I must curtsy, because she is the royalty." At the door to the princess's room, Meg had a sudden crisis of confidence. She stood a moment, clutching the spool of thread and muttering to herself. "Now, how did that go?" she said. "Give the princess the thread, and then give her the curtsy? No. First the curtsy, and then the thread. That's it, Gore. That's right. That's the order. Start with the curtsy and finish with the thread." She's really concerned. She's a sweet little girl. She knocked at the princess's door. "Enter," said the pea. Meg, hearing nothing, knocked again. "Enter," said the pea, and Meg, still hearing nothing, knocked yet again. "Maybe," she said to herself, "the princess ain't no home." But then the door was flung wide, and there was the princess herself, staring right at Miggery Sow. "Gore," said Meg, her mouth hanging open. "Hello," said the pea. "Are you the new serving maid? Have you brought me my thread?" "Curtsy I must," shouted Meg. She gathered her skirts, dropped the spool of thread, stuck a foot out, and stepped on the spool, rocked back and forth for what seemed like quite a long time, both to the watching princess and the rocking Meg, and finally fell to the floor with a Miggish thud. "Whoopsie," said Miggery Sow. The pea could not help it. She laughed. "That's all right," she said to Meg, shaking her head. "It's the spirit of the thing that counts." "How's that?" shouted Meg. "It's the spirit of the thing that counts," shouted Pea. "Thank you, miss," said Meg. She got slowly to her feet. She looked at the princess. She looked down at the floor. "From first the curtsy and then the thread," Meg muttered. "Pardon?" said the pea. "Gore," said Meg, "the thread!" She dropped to her hands and knees to locate the spool of thread. When she found it, she stood back up and offered it to Pea. "I brought you your thread, didn't I?" "Lovely," said the princess, as she took the thread from Meg. "Thank you so much. I cannot seem to hold on to a spool of red thread. Every one I have disappears somehow." And we know why that is, don't we? The mice take it. "Are you making a thing?" asked Meg, squinting at the cloth in the pea's hand. "I am making a history of the world. My world," said the pea. "In tapestry. See? Here is my father, the king, and he is playing the guitar because that is something he loves to do and does quite well. And here's my mother, the queen, and she is eating soup because she loved soup." "Soup? Gore! That's against the law." "Yes," said the princess. "My father outlawed it because my mother died while she was eating it." "Your ma's dead?" "Yes," said the pea. "She died just last month." She bit her bottom lip to stop it from trembling. "Ain't that the thing?" said Meg. "My ma's dead too." "How old were you when she died?" "Old was I?" said Meg, taking a step back away from the princess. "I'm sorry then." No. How old were you?" shouted the pea. "Not but 6, said Meg. "I'm sorry," said the princess. She gave Meg a quick, deep look of sympathy. "How old are you now?" 12 years. So am I, said the princess. We're the same age. What is your name? She shouted. Miggery, Miggery Sow, but most just calls me Mig. And I saw you once before, princess. You passed me by on a little white horse. On my birthday it was, and I was in the field with Uncle Sheep, and it was sunset time. Did I wave to you? Asked the princess. Eh? Did I wave? Shouted the pea. Yes, nodded Mig. But you didn't wave back, said the princess. I did, said Mig, only you didn't see. Some day I will sit on a little white horse and wear a crown and wave. Some day, said Mig, and she put up a hand to touch her left ear. I will be a princess too. Really? Said the pea, and she gave Mig another quick look, deep look, but said nothing else. When Mig finally made her way back down the golden stairs, Louise was waiting for her. How long, she roared, did it take you to deliver a spool of thread to the princess? Too long, guessed Mig. That's right, said Louise, and she gave Mig a good clout to the ear. You are not destined to be one of our star servants. That is already abundantly clear. No, ma'am, said Mig. That's all right, though, because I'm to be a princess. You, a princess? Don't make me laugh. This, reader, was a little joke on Louise's part, as she was not a person who laughed, ever. Not even at a notion as ridiculous as Miggery Sow becoming a princess. So, dear Mig, as you probably have already guessed, she's probably not at a level of a 12-year-old, and that's okay, but people are treating her not with a lot of kindness, as you have seen. Chapter 30, To the Dungeon. At the castle, for the first time in her young life, Mig had enough to eat, and eat she did. She quickly became plump, and then plumper still. She grew rounder and rounder and bigger, only her head stayed small. Reader, as the teller of this tale, it is my duty from time to time to utter some hard and rather disagreeable truths. In the spirit of honesty, then, I must inform you that Mig was the tiniest bit lazy. And two, she was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. That is, she was a bit slow. Because of these shortcomings, Louise was hard-pressed to find a job that Miggery Sow could effectively perform. In quick succession, Mig failed as a lady-in-waiting. She was caught trying on the gown of a visiting duchess. A seamstress, she sewed the cloak of the riding master to her own frock and ruined both. And as a chambermaid, she was sent to clean a room, she stood open-mouthed and delighted, admiring the gold walls and floors and tapestries, exclaiming over and over again, "Gor, ain't it pretty? Gor, ain't it something then?" And she did no cleaning at all. And while Mig was trying and failing at these many domestic chores, other important things were happening in the castle. The rat in the dungeon below was pacing and muttering in the darkness, waiting to take his revenge on the princess. And upstairs in the castle, the princess had met a mouse, and the mouse had fallen in love with her. Will there be consequences? You bet. Just as Mig's inability to perform any job well had its consequences, for finally, as a last resort, Louise sent Mig to the kitchen, where Cook had a reputation for dealing effectively with difficult help. In Cook's kitchen, Mig dropped eggshells in the pound cake batter. She scrubbed the kitchen floor with cooking oil instead of cleanser. She sneezed directly on the king's pork chop moments before it was to be served to him. "Of all the good-for-nothings I have encountered," shouted Cook, "surely you are the worst, the most cauliflower-eared, the good-for-nothingest. There's only one place left for you, the dungeon." "Eh?" said Mig, cupping a hand around her ear. "You are being sent to the dungeon. You are to take the jailer his noonday meal. That will be your duty from now on." Reader, you know that the mice of the castle feared the dungeon? Must I tell you that the humans feared it too? Certainly it was never far from their thoughts. In the warm months, a foul odor rose out of its dark depths and permeated the whole of the castle, and in the still cold nights of winter, terrible howls issued from the dark place, as if the castle itself were weeping and moaning. It's only the wind, the people of the castle assured each other, nothing but the wind. Many a serving girl had been sent to the dungeon, bearing the jailer's meal, only to return white-faced and weeping, hands trembling, teeth chattering, insisting that they would never go back. And worse, there were whispered stories of those servant girls who had been given the job of feeding the jailer, who had gone down the stairs and into the dungeon, and who had never been seen or heard from again. Do you believe that this will be Mig's fate? Gore, I hope not. What kind of a story would this be without Mig? Listen, you cauliflower-eared fool, shouted Cook. This is what you do. You take the tray of food down to the dungeon, and you wait for the old man to eat the food, and then you bring the tray back up. Do you think you can manage that? I reckon so, said Mig. I take the old man the tray, and he eats what's on it, and then I bring the tray back up. Empty it would be then. I bring the empty tray back up from the deep downs. That's right, said Cook. Seems simple, don't it? But I'm sure you'll find a way to bungle it. Eh? Said Mig. Nothing, said Cook. Good luck to you. You'll be needing it. She watched as Mig descended the dungeon stairs. They were the very same stairs, reader, that the mouse Despero had been pushed down the day before. Unlike the mouse, however, Mig had a light on the tray with the food. There was a single flickering candle to show her the way. She turned on the stairs and looked back at Cook and smiled. That cauliflower-eared, good-for-nothing fool, said Cook, shaking her head. What's to become of someone who goes into the dungeon smiling, I ask you? Reader, for the answer to Cook's question, you must read on. Chapter 31, A Song in the Dark. The terrible foul odor of the dungeon did not bother Mig. Perhaps that is because sometimes when Uncle was giving her a good clout to the ear, he missed the mark and delivered a good clout to Mig's nose instead. This happened often enough that it interrupted the proper working of Mig's senses. And so it was that the overwhelming stench of despair and hopelessness and evil was not at all discernible to her, and she went happily down the twisting and turning stairs. Gore, she shouted. It's dark, ain't it? Yes, it is, Mig, she answered herself. But if I was a princess, I would be so glittery light there wouldn't be a place in the world that was dark to me. At this point, Miggery Sow broke into a little song that went something like this. I ain't the Princess Pea, but someday I will be the pea, someday I will be. Mig, as you can imagine, wasn't much of a singer, more of a bellower, really. But in her little song there was, to the rightly tuned ear, a certain kind of music. And as Mig went singing down the stairs of the dungeon, there appeared from the shadows a rat, wrapped in a cloak of red and wearing a spoon on his head. Yes, whispered the rat, a lovely song, just the song I have been waiting to hear. And Roscoe quietly fell in step beside Miggery Sow. At the bottom of the stairs, Mig shouted out into the darkness, Gore, it's me, Miggery Sow. Most calls me Mig, delivering your food. Come and get it, Mr. Deep Downs. There was no response. The dungeon was quiet, but it was not quiet in a good way. It was quiet in an ominous way. It was quiet in the way of small, frightening sounds. There was the snail-like slither of water oozing down the walls, and from around a darkened corner there came the low moan of someone in pain. And then, too, there was the noise of the rats going about their business, their sharp nails hitting the stones of the dungeon, and their long tails dragging behind them through the blood and muck. Reader, if you were standing in the dungeon, you would certainly hear all of these disturbing and ominous sounds. If I were standing in that dungeon, I would hear those sounds. If we were standing together in the dungeon, we would hear these sounds and we would be very frightened. We would cling to each other in our fear. But what did Miggery sow hear? That's right, absolutely nothing. And so she was not afraid at all, not in the least. She held the tray up higher, and the candle shed its weak light on the towering pile of spoons and kettles. "Gor," said Mig, "look at them things. I ain't never imagined there could be so many spoons in the whole wide world." "There is more to this world than anyone could imagine," said a booming voice from the darkness. "True, true," whispered Roscoe. "The old jailer speaks true." "Gor," said Mig, "who said that?" And she turned in the direction of the jailer's voice. Chapter 32. Beware of the rats. The candlelight on Mig's tray revealed Gregory limping toward her, the thick rope tied around his ankle, his hands outstretched. "You, Gregory presumes, have brought food for the jailer." "Gor," said Mig. She took a step backward. "Give it here," said Gregory, and he took the tray from Mig and sat down on an overturned kettle that had rolled free from the tower. He balanced the tray on his knees and stared at the covered plate. "Gregory assumes that today again there is no soup." "Eh?" said Mig. "Soup!" shouted Gregory. "Illegal!" shouted Mig back. "Most foolish," muttered Gregory as he lifted the cover off the plate. "Too foolish to be born, a world without soup." He picked up a drumstick and put the whole of it in his mouth and chewed and swallowed. "Here," said Mig, staring hard at him, "you forgot the bones." "Not forgotten, chewed." "Gor," said Mig, staring at Gregory with respect, "you eats the bones? You are most ferocious." Gregory ate another piece of chicken, a wing, bones, and all, and then another. Mig watched him admiringly. "Someday," she said, moved suddenly to tell this man her deepest wish, "I will be a princess." At this pronouncement, Roscoe, who was still at Mig's side, did a small, deliberate jig of joy in the light of the one candle. His dancing shadow was large and fearsome indeed. "Gregory sees you," Gregory said to the rat's shadow. Roscoe ceased his dance. He moved to hide beneath Mig's skirts. "Eh?" shouted Mig. "What's that?" "Nothing," said Gregory. "So you aim to be a princess. Well, everyone has a foolish dream. Gregory, for instance, dreams of a world where soup is legal. And that rat, Gregory is sure, has some foolish dream too." "If only you knew," whispered Roscoe. "What?" shouted Mig. Gregory said nothing more. Instead, watch me carefully, he reached into his pocket and then held his napkin up to his face and sneezed into it. Once, twice, 3 times. "Bless you," shouted Meg. "Bless you, bless you." "Back to the world of light," Gregory whispered, and then he balled the napkin up and placed it on the tray. "Gregory is done," he said, and he held the tray out to Mig. Did you see what he did there? Who do you think he's talking to in that napkin? Yeah, you're right. Despero. Sending him back upstairs. "Done, are you? Then the tray goes back upstairs. Cook says it must. You take the tray to the deep downs, you wait for the old man to eat, and then you bring the tray back. Them's my instructions." "Did they instruct you, too, to beware of the rats?" "The what?" "The rats. What about them?" "Beware of them," shouted Gregory. "Right," said Mig. "Beware the rats." Roscoe, hidden beneath Mig's skirts, rubbed his front paws together. "Warn her all you like, old man," he whispered. "My hour has arrived. The time is now, and your rope must break. No nibbling this time, rather a serious chew that will break it in 2. Yes, it's all coming clear. Revenge is at hand." And you know, I always tell you never to have revenge. Anyway, we're on chapter 33, A Rat Who Knows Her Name. Mig had climbed the dungeon stairs and was preparing to open the door to the kitchen when the rat spoke to her. "May I detain you for a moment?" Mig looked to her left and then to her right. "Down here," said Roscoe. Mig looked at the floor. "Gor," she said, "but you're a rat, ain't you? And didn't the old man just warn me of such?" "Beware the rats," he said. She held the tray up higher so that the light from the candle shone directly on Roscoe and the golden spoon on his head. and the blood-red cloak around his neck. "There is no need to panic. None at all," said Roscoe. As he talked, he reached behind his back, and using the handle, he raised his soup spoon off his head, much in the manner of a man lifting his hat to a lady. "Gore," said Meg. "A rat with manners." "Yes," said Roscoe. "How do you do?" "My papa had him some cloth much like yours, Mr. Rat," said Meg. "Red like that. He traded me for it." "Ah," said Roscoe, and he smiled a large, knowing smile. "Ah, did he really? That is a terrible story, a tragic story." Reader, if you will pardon me, we must pause for a moment to consider a great and unusual thing, a portentous thing. That great, unusual, portentous thing is this. Roscoe's voice was pitched perfectly to make its way through the tortuous path of Meg's broken down, cauliflowered ears. That is to say, dear reader, Miggery thou heard, perfect and true, every single word the rat Roscoe uttered. "You have known your share of tragedy," said Roscoe to Meg. "Perhaps it's time for you to make the acquaintance of triumph and glory." "Triumph?" said Meg. "Glory?" "Allow me to introduce myself," said Roscoe. "I am Chia Roscoe. Friends call me Roscoe, and your name is Miggery Sow. And it is true, that is it not, that most people call you simply Mig?" "Ain't that the thing?" shouted Meg. "A rat who knows my name!" "Miss Miggery, my dear, I do not want to appear too forward so early in our acquaintance, but may I inquire, am I right in ascertaining that you have aspirations?" "What do you mean, aspirations?" shouted Meg. "Miss Miggery, there is no need to shout. None at all. As you can hear me, so I can hear you. We two are perfectly suited, each to the other." Roscoe smiled again, displaying a mouthful of sharp yellow teeth. "Aspirations, my dear, are those things that would make a serving girl wish to be a princess." "Gore," agreed Meg. "A princess is exactly what I want to be." "There is, my dear, a way to make that happen. I believe that there is a way to make that dream come true." "You mean that I could be the Princess Pea?" "Yes, your highness," said Roscoe, and he swept the spoon off his head and bowed deeply at his waist. "Yes, your most royal Princess Pea." "Gore," said Meg. "May I tell you my plan? May I illustrate for you how we can make your dream of becoming a princess a reality?" "Yes," said Meg. "Yes." "It begins," said Roscoe, "with yours truly and the chewing of a rope." Meg held the tray with one small candle burning bright, and she listened as the rat went on, speaking directly to the wish in her heart. So passionately did Roscoe speak, and so intently did the serving girl listen, that neither noticed as the napkin on the tray moved, nor did they hear the small mouse-like noises of disbelief and outrage that issued from the napkin as Roscoe went on unfolding, step by step, his diabolical plan to bring the princess to the darkness. End of the third book. Of course, you're probably already thinking Despero is not going to allow the princess to be put in any danger. And you would be right in thinking that. Book 4 is called Recall to the Light, and we'll read that. I might read it a little bit later this afternoon. Okay, have a great day.